So, do we acknowledge the time gap since the last time we uploaded?
It's been close to a month, so I think we do.
If we acknowledge the time gap, then we can't acknowledge that we acknowledge the time gap. You know what I mean?
Right, I know. But
But
now
but we are doing that right now.
right, we're acknowledging
So-
the acknowledgement, which is, part of our
Shtick.
meta shtick that we do sometimes when we think it's funny and just kind of ramble onward about how we think it's funny without actually saying we think it's funny because it's a meta joke.
Which
Except now we've acknowledged that we've acknowledged it's.
and
that
we
we think
continue
it's
to
funny.
acknowledge that we're
How many
acknowledging.
levels of acknowledgement can we get here?
How deep
I'm
does the
not
dream
entirely
go?
Sure. I think we could just go to 100 orders of acknowledgement and make that the whole show.
That we could. That's a possibility. I don't know how.
I don't think
entertaining that would
our two listeners are craving for that after
No.
this long of a hiatus, though.
be. Right. It's like it's just meta commentary about how we make meta commentary on our meta commentary.
Yep. So yeah, we've been gone a while.
Mostly because I got so sick with COVID pneumonia, I just couldn't.
Literally couldn't talk.
I couldn't even.
Yeah.
Couldn't dot either.
Yep. So Nathan got COVID.
And that was just.
I
awful.
got COVID.
Then just
Riley was
would-
traveling for Christmas break, so we just were like, let's take a break for Christmas. And then after Christmas, just more things got in the way.
Like Riley moving back, and then
Our roommate got influenza.
yeah.
So it was
And then
just
Riley probably got that influenza, as I'm sure you can tell on account of my still slightly sick sounding voice.
so you tested negative for
I tested
COVID?
negative for the COVID.
so dang. Yeah, I suppose you were right around when he had that. I picked up something. It must have been like a more mild form of it, but it wasn't pleasant either.
See, I managed to escape that, fortunately, because I was still suffering the aftershocks of pneumonia. And this is like the first week where I can hold a full conversation without coughing my lungs out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's nice.
So the thing about an audio only format is that when your respiratory system is rather put out, it makes it basically impossible. So,
And,
but
and here's the other thing. I was playing a Nintendo DS game, which requires you to blow into the microphone.
oh yeah,
But my 3DS wouldn't pick up my just blowing. And I'm still suffering from, like, just having been sick. So I'm shouting into the microphone to get Link to blow on his little flute. And I'm coughing every other time. So I brought that on myself. I realized that.
yeah.
So, yeah. It's not fun to make noise when you have cough.
Yep. But other than the constantly being ill, managed to have some fun during Christmas vacation anyway.
Indeed.
That we did.
Got together with the two listeners. Probably the last time we'll see them before they get married at this point.
Well, given how those things shake out, people get married and then they just evaporate from our lives.
Yeah, although John's still got a bunch of stuff here he needs to collect yet of the recording of this podcast, so that might help.
He'll sneak in like a thief in the night, and we won't see him ever again.
Fair enough.
It is how it must be.
Yeah. So it goes. But yeah, so Riley's back at St. Meinrad, and we're back here in the house. What else is new? We had our niece's baptism this weekend.
Our mutual niece's baptism.
Yep.
Because his
Not
brother-in-law and
Riley's,
my
obviously.
sister-in-law
Right.
had a baby and got her baptized last week, and that was great.
Yep. It's fun being a godfather. Cute little thing.
Oh, yeah.
You're the godfather.
Yep.
Also, shout out to my sister Sarah, the godmother.
Mm-hmm.
She'll do a fantastic job. This will
Yep.
be a power team.
Yeah, baby screamed all the way through the baptism. I was standing right next to the deacon, and I could not hear a word he was saying, but
No,
it was
the
a good
baby
thing.
do.
She got baptized, and
They
It
poured the
was-
water on the head, and they,
Mhm.
they
Put the
blessed the holy
oils
water
on
font. and-
yeah, I was
All
kind of
that
mad
jazz.
because COVID knocked out a good half of my sense of smell, I suppose. So there's
Which
some
half?
things. Well, there's some things I can smell and some things I can't, and one of the things I couldn't was the chrism.
Chrism.
Yeah, which I was like,
And
dang it,
chrism
that's one of the
smells
best
so
parts.
nice.
It does smell so nice.
I know. I was kind of mad about that. It's
You get it so few times in your life.
Mm-hmm. Like I can smell coffee, which is nice, but I was testing this out. I was almost sticking my nose in whiskey the other day, and I couldn't smell it. I was like, this is weird.
Like, not even the alcohol hit
No,
you?
like I wasn't even feeling the burn on my nostrils,
Wow.
which was weird.
Oh.
So it's a weird side effect of
Should have
COVID.
lit it on fire.
Well, that not that kind of burn, but
Nah.
so things are a little wonky, but you know what? We're getting back into the routine of things.
Yeah.
It's
I lit a fire
2022.
under my nostrils just to smell something. Anything.
We're getting back into the swing of things. Been watching a bunch of Attack on Titan, Book of Boba Fett,
Episode
Cobra
three
Kai.
Slappy Snake Boys.
Yeah,
we
Slappy Snake
finished
Boys.
the last 2 episodes. How about you?
I have not yet
Okay.
because I've been on the road and J-term is a busy time.
You know that makes sense.
So.
There's
And
only
I've
2 more
been
episodes,
watching the latest episode of Attack on Titan.
Oh,
Season four.
Season 4 started coming out.
Season 4,
Season
part
4,
2.
part 2. By the time we get there, it'll have been out for months.
We're almost
so.
done with season 2.
Got 3 episodes
Yes.
left. We have. Well, we'll talk about the reveals when we end up doing the.
Yeah, we'll have a
Assaulting Large Boys episode.
Yep.
Many things are happening in this bit.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So we're just kind of clicking along. It's
Yeah, I'm back in the classes. I'm back at work now. This will be a heavy semester for me, so it'll be. But it's my last one, so it's the last push.
mm-hmm. And you'll be graduated.
I'll be all graduated. I'll be cylindrical.
Yep. What else? Yeah, back to work and stuff after Christmas. It's almost mid-January already as we're finally getting back into it. But yeah, we'll be
And we're podcasting again.
yeah, we're podcasting again.
We're talking into microphones and then posting it on the internet again.
Wow.
Wow.
Going on 2 years doing that in about a month
Yeah.
or so,
Gee.
which is kind of wild.
With nary a break except for last month.
Well, there've been like
We've had
Almost
several
10
breaks,
breaks
but
at this
they've all been just a week, pretty much.
Right.
yeah,
This is
this
the
is the
first
only
substantial break.
yeah.
We
Apologies.
had that one 3-week break this summer.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's the only other significant length.
But
one.
again, that's mostly because you were traveling and such.
Yeah. So we will we'll just keep plugging away at the podcast as time goes on. But we're back. Sorry, Faith, we didn't do a Christmas special because of the aforementioned issues we were having with our respiratory systems. But speaking of issues, we're the Palladium Papists. I'm James.
I am Nathan.
And I'm right.
This episode back will be a philosophical one.
In a world where one man will decide whether to pull a lever and kill one man, or not pull a lever and allow 5 people to die, find out in Philosophical.
Which is the segment of the show where we get philosophical about films.
Yeah. So this week's, fortunately, over the break, we did manage to view some content for the podcast. So today we are talking about Gladiator.
Gladiator.
Yeah, Gladiator.
I for one am glad he ate her.
When you say it like Gladiator, it sounds like some sort of
A man who's happy that he's losing weight.
or like some sort of specialist. Like he's a gladiator.
Well, they are kind of specialists at killing each other.
Yeah.
That's their whole shtick.
So, Gladiator
Stars
starring
Muscle Crowe,
Yep, Muscle Crowe.
Russell Moe.
Yep, comes out it came out in the year 2000, the
Ooh.
year of our Lord 2000. And it
Proceeds
follows,
from the year 2000.
It can drink.
Cubs.
Yeah, that's how old this movie is. So you have Muscle Crowe plays Maximus, who is a Roman general serving the Emperor Marcus Aurelius fighting the barbarians in Germania. He wins a major victory, and the Emperor, who's kind of getting up there in age, congratulates him on his victory and takes him aside. And he's like, hey, my son Joaquin Phoenix, who plays Commodus, this guy is he's not quite ready to have the capital of Arizona named after him. He's a pretty immoral dude. I don't want him to be emperor. And I think this whole having emperors thing is kind of bunk. So why don't we go back to the good old days when Rome was a republic and return the total control of power to the Senate? And Maximus is like, well, gee, thanks, boss, but I'd rather go home to my family because I've been away from them for a long time on this war I've been fighting for you. And he's like, don't worry. Just do this thing for me, be the protector of Rome, and give the power back to the people. And
you can go back to your farm.
Then you can go back to your farm. So when he breaks the news to his boy Commodus, it's not very well taken. The guy was pretty bent on succeeding his father as emperor. And he's like, my whole life I've only ever wanted to please you, Dad. So how about I, instead of letting you pass your power to Maximus and doing the whole give Rome back to the people, I kind of hate the Senate. I'm just going to...
I am the Senate.
Right. I'm just going to strangle you real quick here. Oh, he died in his sleep. I'm the emperor now. Oh, by the way,
He died because he stopped breathing.
Mm-hmm. So I'm the emperor now. Hey, Maximus, do you give me your undying loyalty? And Maximus is like, something's off here.
Now.
This guy totally didn't meet a natural end. I just want to go home. So he tries to leave, and Commodus is like, well, he didn't give me his loyalty, so that means he's got to die. So he has his Praetorian Guard take Maximus off into the woods and kill him. But it doesn't go quite according to plan because Maximus is he's a super warrior, so he takes out the guys trying to kill him and makes a break for his family because he knows that they're gonna have a crosshairs on him, or the Roman equivalent, like bow crosshairs or whatever. I don't know on them. From Commodus. He gets to his home and it's already been burned to the ground, and his wife and son have been brutally executed. So he has nothing left and just kind of wanders around. He was wounded in the struggle to escape, so he's starting to succumb to like the infection and stuff, and passes out and gets picked up by these I guess Bedouin or some sort of Arab traders who pick him up, heal him up, and decide to sell him as a slave. So he gets bought by this guy named Proximo, who his whole shtick is he trains and fights gladiators in this Roman province somewhere, I believe in like North Africa. Since Marcus Aurelius outlawed the gladiatorial games in the city of Rome itself, they sort of had to go to these backwater places and fight. So pretty quickly, now that Maximus has been healed up and stuff, he's kind of fighting or venting his rage at the loss of his wife and son and his burning desire for revenge on Commodus. Fights his way through the rings, asks people if they're not entertained, that type of thing. And then there's just a random guy wearing a white crew t-shirt and blue jeans in the crowd, but we won't talk about that. Let's see. Once somebody points it out to you, you can't unsee it. And so it becomes because of his fighting prowess and his leadership skills helping his fellow gladiators get through scrapes, he earns their respect and even the respect of Proximo. who
Proximo was a former gladiator who
Yep.
won his freedom from his master by being a really great gladiator. So there's this.
he was granted a wooden sword, which symbolizes freedom by the emperor himself, Marcus Aurelius.
And so now Proximo kind of offers that sort of thing to
He's like,
Maximus. It's
if you want to
hey,
gain your freedom, you got to win over the crowd. That's your shot. So, and Proximo can't just release him because it's kind of up to the power of the emperor. So, meanwhile, Joaquin Phoenix is Commodus is back in.
the
in
Joker's in the hot seat as the emperor, and he's
We
all
live in
trying
a
to-
society where there are no gladiatorial games. I think we need to bring those back because I want the people to love me. And he's kind of having a cat fight with the Senate over popularity. So he reinstates the games. And so as a result of that, Maximus and Proximo's crew travels to Rome to become part of the gladiatorial games. And he's like, it's going to be great. The crowd is wild. It's a big old stadium, the biggest, live events venue in the ancient world. It's going to be great. Also, Commodus's sister, who Lucilla, I believe, she kind of had a thing for Maximus back in the day, but they each married different spouses, and she had a son, he had a son. Her husband passed away, so she's a widow, and she just has her boy, who's all she has left.
And now her brother's being super creepy at her.
Yeah, he's being super creepy at her, constantly threatening her son,
That sort of thing.
who's trying to keep her
Power
in control.
mad emperor thing,
Mm-hmm. So
Have you ever tried going mad without power? It's no fun.
Yep. So Maximus and the crew are really good at winning these gladiatorial battles. The deal in ancient Rome is that with the Colosseum and stuff, they would reenact ancient battles or whatever with real live fighters. And so Maximus and his crew were supposed to be the team that loses in this recreation, but he uses his general skills to marshal the guys into a victory. And Commodus is kind of impressed, so he goes down onto the field to meet this man called the
Mysterious
Spaniard.
masked gladiator they only called the Spaniard.
And Maximus is like, crap, he's going to know I'm alive now. Because as far as Commodus knows, Maximus was killed at his orders. So he's forced to reveal himself. He wants to friggin' kill Commodus right then and there, but A, he's got bodyguards. B, his biggest fan is Lucilla's son, who walks down onto the field with his uncle because he thinks it's kind of cool, so he can't really do anything about it there. So he's forced to reveal himself in one of the most BA lines ever. He goes through his full name and is like,
His rank and his
I'm
stuff.
husband to a murder, or father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I'll have my revenge, something along those lines. You killed my wife and my boy, prepare to die, type of thing. And Commodus is like, oh crap. Well, he's super popular with the crowd.
So I can't just get rid of him.
Because the whole point was to win a popularity contest.
And so I'm just going to put him in increasingly, in battles where the odds are increasingly stacked against him and hope he dies.
Yep.
He does not.
Yep. Meanwhile, Lucilla's like, hey, I've run across this servant guy who used to work for you when you were the general. I've also got the senator who doesn't trust Commodus. I don't trust Commodus. What do you say we break you out, get you back to your army, who's just kind of resting in Austria or some such, because they're so loyal to you, and we can overthrow Commodus and fulfill Marcus Aurelius's wishes. And so at first, also Maximus is like, I don't know, but then they talk him into it. Being a power-hungry SOB that he is, Commodus is very paranoid and catches on that Lucilla is up to something. So he blackmails her into revealing the plot. And so the night that Maximus is supposed to make his escape out of the city, stuff hits the fan. So the senator they were working with gets arrested. Lucilla is basically under house arrest. They hang the servant guy that used to work for Maximus. Proximo and the gladiators try to buy him time and fight the Praetorian guards off so he can escape, but it all is basically for nothing, and Maximus gets captured. The whole plot's a bust. So as he's sitting there in prison, Commodus is like, well, you failed, and I can't get you to die in a gladiatorial fight, so here's the deal. I'm going to fight you one-on-one. And Maximus is like, why would you do that? Would you be worried that you're going to die? He's like, oh, no, I'm not worried. So he shanks him, or Commodus shanks him to rig the fight. And he's like, cover up his wound and don't let it show, but don't stop the bleeding. So they go out into the Colosseum and have their duel. Even though he's bleeding to death, Maximus still manages to overpower and kill Commodus. The Praetorian guards, one of the commander of whom used to be one of the general or commanders with Maximus, out of respects, lets the fight continue instead of quashing it like he was ordered to by Commodus. And so as Maximus lays there dying, he orders the power to be given back to the Senate and fulfill the wishes of Marcus Aurelius as he had been given. And now that his mission's complete, he can go home to his wife and son in the afterlife instead of in this earthly life. So he dies, and he's honored and carried off the field, and the movie ends. So that is the broad plot of Gladiator. Now, every time I watch Gladiator, I have to look this up. The Emperor Commodus was a real person. He was kind of a megalomaniac, and he was assassinated. He did have a habit of like going out onto the Colosseum and fighting with the gladiators for the fun of it. He wasn't killed by one though. He was like murdered by his wrestling partner or something. His sister did betray him and that stuff. So that part's historically accurate. So it's kind of cool how, even though this story is it's good
by the true events.
It's good historical fiction. But yeah, let's go into the things we like about Gladiator. What are you guys' thoughts?
Well, I like it.
I like it.
It's a good movie.
Good movie.
I mean, one of the things that I find the most compelling about this movie is just the determination of a man who's had everything taken from him.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when a lot of times you see people who are down on their luck just kind of give up and go, what's the point?
Yep. An honorable man who was betrayed, no less. He's a very sympathetic character.
Maximus almost gives up, but he's given something to fight for, quite literally.
Mm-hmm. He becomes close friends with this man, this African man, a fellow gladiator named Juba, who was, he was a hunter for his tribe, but then he was kidnapped and he will never see his family again either. So he and Maximus kind of bond over their sort of tragic circumstances and encourage each other to fight to stay alive, because one day, one way or another, they'll see their families again. Maximus manages to use his natural born abilities as a leader to keep his fellow gladiators alive, basically, and
a number of them anyway. The important named characters.
Mm-hmm. And then to the point where they love him enough to sacrifice their lives for him. Except for the Juba manages to stay alive. One of the other dying wishes Maximus had too is that all of his gladiator brothers be set free. So, it's implied that Juba is able to go home to his family and stuff. So it's kind of a parting gift, which is a really cool thing. The other, I guess, the thing I really like, and I'm sure a lot of people, it's not like super historically accurate, but it's a really faithful depiction of the Roman army, and like the battle at the beginning is pretty superb. The you know.
And also kind of how screwed up Roman culture was at the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's like right after
Because Rome is starting to reach its peak. You know, it's starting to become opulent as time goes on. I'm trying to remember where Marcus Aurelius is in relation to the time of Jesus as sort of a frame of reference. I think it's...
I want to say he's about 200-ish years prior.
Yep. Somewhere around that time frame. But yeah, so Rome is kind of nearing its height, and the people have become sort of corrupt and... what's the word I'm looking for? Like...
they're enjoying blood sport, for crying out loud.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's a culture that's gotten to that point.
It's starting to become depraved.
And
Marcus Aurelius's whole thing in the beginning of the movie is like, you know, there was once this dream that was called Rome, this high ideal of a republic where, you know, government by the people, for the people, shall not perish from... different movie. But yeah, there was this idea called Rome, and, you know, where people were to live virtuously. Because Marcus Aurelius wasn't just a great warrior emperor. He was also a philosopher. And the main reason why he doesn't want to hand power on to his son Commodus is because he's a deeply immoral man. And so he sees Commodus as sort of the representation of that side of Rome.
whereas he sees Maximus as the representation of what Rome was always meant to be.
Mm-hmm.
Honorable, hardworking men who want to live their simple lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Because in the early days, the majority of the Roman army, the Roman army was kind of a volunteer, well, not strictly speaking volunteer, but it was made up of citizens who ordinarily were just farmers, but in times of war, they were called upon to, lead the armies of Rome and so forth. So that's the sort of citizen soldier servant of the emperor ideal is basically represented in Maximus. Yeah. Let's see, what else did I like about it? I mean, it's kind of in that late 90s, early 2000s, like strongman action movie. And there's a few things in there here and there, like the excessive use of slow-mo and different things like that. But
it's kind of its time, but that's also kind of a part of its charm. It's like, oh yeah, this is a turn of the century film, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. But it's, I don't know, overall just a great film.
And the action scenes are well choreographed and well shot, except for like certain pans where they accidentally go too far and
the chariot flips over and there's like this gas pressure canister of some sort. Little things like that, but
that you don't notice in the moment until you watch some Did You Know video and it points it out and you can't unsee it.
Yep. The movie was directed by Ridley Scott.
Ridley Scott, the alien guy.
Yep. Which is kind of interesting.
He's got a wide breadth of work under his belt.
Yeah, I mean, he already did. He also, just looking at his IMDb page. Well, he did Blade Runner, The Martian, Gladiator. There's a whole bunch of Gladiator 2. What? Anyway, that hasn't been done yet. So okay, he's a pretty accomplished director, and this is probably one of his best movies, arguably, of the ones I've seen anyway. And they're all pretty good that I've seen. Any other things we like about Gladiator before we move on into our analysis?
I feel like the acting and casting are kind of top notch.
If I were
you
to
get this really great like Russell Crowe plays a great like hardened warrior, just kind of. And then Joaquin Phoenix is a total sleazeball. You believe him in every role he's in.
He is a very good villain in this movie. We'll get into the performances probably in the beauty portion,
right? But just overall, really solid performances.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's cool to watch him be so good.
Yeah, it's a very satisfying movie on sort of a visceral level. Anything to add, Riley?
Nope, I can't think of anything else.
All right. So let's get into our transcendental analysis here. Truth. What are some elements of truth that we can pull from Gladiator?
I'm just a simple farmer, sir.
Yep.
Power corrupts.
Yeah.
Absolute power can corrupt absolutely. Of course, then again, Joaquin Phoenix was corrupt before he had power.
Mhm.
So
I think the concept of the willingness of a man to set aside his power willingly, or willingness to do it willingly, you know what I mean? To willingly set aside his power is what makes him worthy to wield it in a certain sense. That
right.
the baseline of humility is what makes a great leader.
Because you had the former Caesar, who was a very people conscious, very just kind of, he was the sort
philosopher. He did expand the Roman Empire to its widest extent it had ever been, and I believe ever was after that point.
But it's
But
like it's a
he was
dictator
like, what are all
who
these
loved his people,
Yeah,
whereas
Commodus just
Commodus
wants the
is
power.
a dictator who loved himself.
Yes.
And that's the difference. It's the inward versus the outward.
Mm-hmm.
One worked for the people, one worked for his own gain. So you kind of get that contrast between what good fatherhood of a country is versus what bad leadership of a country is, you know?
Yeah, other
Or
focus
good
versus...
kingship versus bad kingship, because you've got an almost... Because God's kingship is one of love, one of fatherhood, one of guidance and philosophy, beauty. You know, so it's kind of reflective of that in a more human, more Roman way. But he's like the good king.
Yep.
Example.
And a lot of the themes that I in the movie are kind of drawn from, because the Romans, they got a lot of philosophy and things from the Greeks, their ideas of democracy and stuff, but also about the concept of virtue. And that's kind of how Commodus's character is judged by his father. He's like, he's not a moral man. He desires Rome to uphold the virtues, and he sees those lived out in Maximus. So his desire to pass on those things, and that Rome should become more like those things in the future, is ultimately a noble thing. Also, even though it's like a sort of pagan Roman idea of the afterlife, the thought of, obviously, as Catholics, the living of a virtuous life so as to see one's loved ones in the afterlife is a relatable, if somewhat different, perspective to what we have.
It was interesting, actually. There's a point in the movie where Maximus and his friend of African descent have a discussion about their differences in...
well, he is African.
He is African, so he descended from Africans.
Anyway.
They have a brief discussion about their differences in understanding of the afterlife, where it's like, do you believe you'll in an afterlife? Do you believe you'll see your family there? And he's like, yes I do. It's like, well, I'd have to wait a while because they're still alive and doing pretty healthy down there, if I remember correctly. But you'll see them again.
Yep.
Another one of the strong points that I think this movie makes is what a man does when he has accomplished everything he has ever set out to. It's like, you see that with Marcus Aurelius reflecting on the meaning of this war as he approaches its completion. He looks at his empire and he's like, what was this all for?
And even his pursuit of that empire led him to be kind of a crappy father to his children. And he is remorseful for that.
Crappy children, actually.
Yeah, I mean...
So it gives him pause and gives him an occasion to reflect on his life and say, I have sought after peace, but I have done it by violence. And it has also come at the cost of my ability to raise my son. And you see that contrasted in Maximus, who's kind of, led an honorable life as a general and wants to not make that mistake. He wants to go back to his family and to be a father to his children and a husband to his wife.
And the whole tragedy of his character comes through how that was taken from him, whereas Marcus Aurelius sort of set that aside willingly in pursuit of an empire. So yeah. Any other elements of truth? All right. Goodness. What is good in Gladiator? ultimately,
What if the real gladiator were the
Our
friends we
made
made along the
way. But,
Yeah.
but that's exactly it. It's him being a leader and respecting his fellow gladiators. And
well,
gaining
and
their
in the
respect.
beginning of the movie, he's shown to be a great leader of men. Like, the emperor Marcus Aurelius acknowledges, like, I didn't really win this war, Maximus. It was your leadership because
not just on a strategic level, but also on an interpersonal level.
yeah, he
He
gets
has
right.
these great pep talks for his guys that are very, very honest, very real, but very motivational and very inspiring.
Yeah, and he's in the trenches with his men, and leads from the front instead of the back. Doesn't use his status to force his men to fight for him, but he's one
He
of
fights
them.
for his men.
Mm-hmm. And they love him for it.
Same thing happens when he teams up with his fellow gladiators. It's
Mm-hmm.
him leading not only by strategy, but by like being there with them, defending and protecting and
Because
fighting
they're-
for them.
They're stronger together, and so that's kind of how they're able to make their way through the different trials they are put through as gladiators. So loyalty is a big thing for him. Honor and loyalty. There's like a sort of battle cry, like slogan they repeat to each other. The Roman soldiers repeat to each other. I forget exactly what it is, but I think
Spears shall be shaken,
yeah,
shields shall be splintered.
yeah. Something in honor. Glory.
For empire and for honor or something like that.
Something along those lines. I forget exactly, but
So day,
red day, ere the sun rises. Anyhow, yeah, this movie came out around the same time. Actually, the year
It was
before
before
The Fellowship. Yeah. So it's just a good time for epic sword battle movies.
It was, yeah.
Any other elements of goodness? I suppose Lucilla's whole deal. She's kind of another tragic character because she's kind of a prisoner of her crazy brother Commodus, and everything she does is to protect the life of her son from his mad uncle, basically.
You've also got just Maximus's faithfulness.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, marriage actually only goes until death do us part.
Right.
But he remains faithful to his family till the very end. And
Yep.
even when he's being
Well, she's making
Priscilla
some.
is making it quite clear that she'd be interested in rekindling things.
Yeah,
and
she's making
Maximus
some
is
moves
like,
on him. He's like, I've got a wife and child.
I've got a
at
wife
home.
and child, and I want to go home to them like right now. Please
Rip
stop.
your rest in peace to your husband, by the way. And so yeah, he's very virtuous and faithful husband, even when he's away at war, when other soldiers wouldn't have had such scruples. So yeah, very very strong, honorable character. And his actions live up to the ideals he sets himself up to live by. Beauty. What is beautiful in Gladiator?
Well, the set design is
Yeah.
like, on point.
The
Costume
costume design.
is on point.
The music is pretty fantastic.
Who is that? Hans Zimmer?
It was Hans Zimmer. Yep.
There was a really cool like main theme that would pop up from time to time. It's like, oh yeah, he's about to gladiate.
Yep. Well, sometimes when I listen to just the "Now We Are Free" song at the end, like I get goosebumps from that. It's pretty good. Great soundtrack. Very well written and directed movie, and the performances in the movie are pretty great. Like,
I mean, it is Ridley Scott. He's a veteran director.
mhm.
A lot
I'd
of great
say-
stuff under his belt.
this is definitely, of the movies, all the movies I've seen with Joaquin Phoenix so far, this is probably, in my opinion,
Some
one of his best,
work.
if not his best performance
How
that
many
I've
movies
seen.
have you seen with Joaquin Phoenix?
Signs.
Oh yeah, he's in that one. That one's fun.
There's a couple. I'm trying to remember what.
He was Johnny Cash in Walk the Line.
I haven't seen that one.
That
but,
one's actually really well put together.
Mhm.
I also haven't seen Joker yet, so.
But he plays probably one of the best he's probably one of the best movie villains put to screen in the last 20 years. I'd say in like
22.
non like superhero, like, yeah, 22, you're right. Jeez.
I know.
He's one of the best villains in cinema, in my opinion. He does a very good job of like making you hate him, and not just from a sort of I'm a bad guy kind of deal, where like he very much portrays a debaucherous,
Mad
immoral
King.
madman.
Deeply vile person.
Mm-hmm. And the contrast between him and between Commodus and Maximus is very clear.
At the center of the film, really.
Mm-hmm. And his motivation isn't entirely unsympathetic either. Like, he lived his whole life with the expectation that he'd be the emperor, and he just wanted to please his father, but then, along the way just kind of gave up and was, due to being neglected, just sort of acted out and became a, immoral person, which is still on him. But
Right. But it's not one of those backstories that's like you're supposed to sympathize with the villain and think it's sad. No, it's more like, yeah, I understand why you tick the way you tick, but you tick awfully, and I don't like you, and you tick me off.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so also his whole shtick with not wanting to give Rome back to the people, like, he kind of has a point. The Senate is in its own ways kind of corrupt, and is sort of who can be more corrupt, him battling back and forth with the Senate, using the gladiatorial fights as a popularity contest with the people. But yeah, he's a very good villain in the movie.
Oh yeah.
And Muscle Crowe does a great job of in his performance as well.
Being a hero.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
So great cinematography, great music, great writing. Fires on all cylinders, this movie.
All air cylinders flipping over there.
Yeah. But unity. What brings everything together in Gladiator?
Fighting.
Well, I'd
It's
say the idea of what it means to be free.
Oh sure. Does it mean that
Like, the movie
Explain,
ends with "Now we are
elaborate that.
free,"
Explain that one.
because there's like two main ideas of freedom, right? You have the freedom to do whatever people who believe freedom means you can do whatever you want, or freedom being the ability to do that which is right. And so in those two camps, you have Commodus, who's the freedom to do whatever he wants and live a depraved lifestyle, and you have Maximus, who sets high ideals that he must live up to, in humility, pursues them.
and then even the old Caesar kind of wanted to free the people by bringing back their authority in government, really,
Mm-hmm.
by bringing back the old Senate system.
Yeah, and it's interesting too how the contrast, because in worldly times, sometimes people who behave depravedly and are not really living in freedom, they're living in sin and enslaved to their vices.
Whereas
They can appear to be quite successful, like Commodus in the movie. He's the emperor of Rome, the most powerful man in the known world at the time. But the virtuous man Maximus is
The
a literal
slave.
slave, fighting as a gladiator to stay alive, basically. But in the end, fighting through adversity and trial, he achieves freedom in a lasting way that no one can ever take away from him.
I would argue that he had it the whole time, more so than Commodus ever did.
Yeah. Yep.
Because he maintained the freedom for excellence and not the freedom of indifference.
Mm-hmm.
He possessed that ability in his state because he was a virtuous man.
And lived up to his dignity all the while. So yeah, very we Catholics we like the whole freedom of
Freedom for excellence.
freedom for excellence. Yeah, this movie, that's, I'd say, the main theme. And the movie ends with his buddy, I think Juba, was it, something like that?
Yes.
Yeah, Juba is saying, I think the last line of the movie is, "And now we are free." So kind of the little bow at the end of the movie. It's like wrap it all up. So, anything to add on the Unity front or just in general?
That was interesting. My take was going to be like the idea of virtue unifies the whole thing, but your point kind of gets to my point. So
Right. It but also ties in some other themes of the film, like the kind of conflict between the two characters, right? Because the whole film is about this conflict. It's a movie where people fight each other a lot, right? It's the gladiator. So there's also this core conflict of these two ideas of freedom at the center of the film.
And Maximus, the interesting thing about this movie is that he's definitely bent on revenge, but he doesn't sacrifice his morals to achieve it. It's more out of a sense of justice than simply getting back at people who have taken things from him. And he has to sort of fight his own like despair to a certain extent in order to attain justice for the lives of his family, and ultimately, you know, the getting Commodus his just desserts for killing a man he very much viewed as like a father to him, Marcus Aurelius.
And not just that, but all the people he oppressed and killed on it while he was emperor, right? And all injustice for all of his fellow gladiators.
Yeah. So it's not really your standard revenge story where like the person seeking it has to abandon their morals. It's rather, it's more vengeance than revenge. Or it's more avenging than revenging, kind of a deal going on. I'm trying to figure out the best way to explain that, but yeah, ultimately he didn't have to compromise himself in order to achieve justice. So I guess without any further ado, any other comments?
Movie good. Watch.
Yes.
movie good.
Watch. You can't watch, but thanks for listening to the Palladium Papists. You can listen to us on Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at Papists. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, or complaints, or suggestions for future episode's, email us at palladiumpapists@gmail.com. Also, you can now rate us on Spotify, so leave a 5-star review or some such so that more people can...
What are we, Uber drivers now? 5 stars.
Yep. So yeah, leave us a review. It'll help other people hear the podcast. So we'll work that into the exit script. I just remembered that. But at any rate, we will be back unless some weird cataclysmic respiratory event says otherwise. We will be back again for real this time next week. Goodbye.
Bye.
See you.